Good day to all of you. Thank you for participating in this lecture series. Thank you, Swami Vedatitanandaji Maharaj, who is the in charge of the Polytechnic College of Belur, and also he is in charge of the Skills Development Center. Maharajji will kindly speak today on spiritual practice in the modern world, and in the next week also, Swami Sarvotamananda Srish Maharaj of Belur will speak on basics of spirituality in daily life on coming Sunday, that is October 24th. So I think we can derive lot of takeaways from Vedantanandaji's today's lecture and Srish Maharajji's lecture on Sunday. Both of the lectures will be, we expect to be main house of information and spiritual insights. Very briefly, we started this lecture series in the wake of COVID and pandemic to give sustenance and encouragement to people to remain calm, to remain peaceful, to remain happy. And we also try to organize some lectures on scriptures also, so that people can have some insights how to face and how through spiritual perspective one can face the difficult situation. So some of you know Maharajji, and also because of his association with Belur Polytechnic, that is Ramakrishna Vivekananda Silpa Mandir. But for the sake of record, I'll introduce him. Swami Vedatitananda ji is a monk of the Ramakrishna order of monks. He joined the order in 1999 at a tribal center in Ponnampet, Coorg district, Karnataka, India, an initiated disciple of most revered Swami Ranganathanandaji Maharaj. He was ordained into sannyasa in 2008 by most revered Swami Atmasthanandaji Maharaj. He served in Belgaum Ramakrishna Mission and along Ramakrishna Mission School before coming to Ramakrishna Mission Shilpa Mandira, Belur Math, India. He is now in charge of Belur Polytechnic College and Skills Development Center at Shilpa Mandira, Belur, Howrah, West Bengal, India. With these words, I would request our Minister in charge, Swami Udaranandaji Maharaj, to kindly introduce Vedantanandaji Maharaj and speak a few words. Swami Udaranandaji Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ganguly. I, on behalf of the Ramakrishna Vedanta Society of the Philippines, welcome you all. We are extremely grateful to Swami Vedatitanandji for kindly accepting our request to speak. And I'm sure everybody will be immensely benefited by what he's going to talk today. So, without further much ado, I would request Mr. Swami Vedatitanandji to please take the chair. You want to take the speaker. Thank you very much.
Ganguly Babu, shall I speak? Shall I start?
Please. You start now.
Swami, kindly speak a bit louder. Swami, kindly speak a bit louder.
Revered Swami Udaranandaji Maharaj, Minister in charge, Ramakrishna Vedanta Society of Philippines, other revered Maharajis, respected devotees and members of the Ramakrishna Mission Philippines. Revered Swami Udaranandaji Maharaj and I, we live together, we work together in neighboring centers in the northeast of India. And I was at that time serving in a school for the tribal children of that state. and Maharaj was serving in a hospital for the tribal people of that state. There were many challenges in the school, and I take this opportunity to put on record the immense help that Maharaj gave to that center, because of which that center has become very stable today. There are many details which I would not like to go into, but let this much be told, that Maharaj helped us in stabilizing that center. That was a very old center with lot of problems. So Maharaj then called me up one day from Philippines and asked, every Sunday we have a lecture, can you address our devotees? Now the kind of relationship that I have with Maharaj and the kind of help that this Maharaj had given us, it is impossible for me to say no. However, I must warn everybody here that I generally do not speak to devotees. Almost all my time, all my life has been spent with students. So anyway, since Maharaj has asked, I will address all of you. And the topic is something which is very, very dear to me. Spiritual practice in the modern world. Now, I am sure all the devotees, all the well-wishers who have joined this program today, you would have gone through the book called The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. It is there in many languages. Hopefully it will come out in the languages of the Philippines also shortly. So Gospel of Ramakrishna is a record of the conversations that Sri Ramakrishna used to have when he lived in Dakshineshwar. It's an amazing book. It is an amazing book. Now in that book, in almost every page, you will find Ramakrishna telling the goal of human life is to see God. What does he say? Repeatedly he says this. Repeatedly he says, the goal of human life is to see God. God has to be seen. It is possible to see God, and God has to be seen. And seeing God is the goal of human life. It's a very interesting idea that Sri Ramakrishna gives. And he doesn't give it once. He gives it repeatedly. Now, if the goal of human life is to see God, how do we see God? How do we see God? So, this is a very old topic, especially for this country, for India, and so also for many parts of the world. And it is generally accepted, that we human beings have four faculties, four capabilities. Four faculties. Now these faculties all human beings are capable of giving and receiving love. That is a faculty through which God can be seen. Just as the ability to reason, to think analytically and deductively is a faculty which can enable us to see God. Third, we have the faculty of intuition. All human beings have this. In a very gross form, it is seen as the sixth sense, andaj. It is there. And that is another faculty which can be refined to enable us to see God. And the last one, the fourth one, is the faculty of will, the faculty of ichha. You can will. So will is another faculty all of us have. We make decisions. All of us have like that. So these four faculties we have. Now these four faculties can be refined. So there is a process for refining. That is what is called a spiritual practice. spiritual practice. So these are very ancient knowledge. This is not a new something. This is very old. Almost all the spiritual books of all the old religions catalog these things. They have developed these methods and they have cataloged it. They have correctly written it down. Beautifully, very beautifully it has been cataloged. It has been recorded. So how exactly are we to see God? Let us take the faculty of reason. So the first faculty is the faculty of reason. So we can start by studying our personality, our own personality. We have a body, we have the mind, and we have a conscious principle inside. There's a conscious principle. You see, when I look at your eyes, I can make out there's a conscious principle there. It is not just a body. The eyes tell me that there is something moving inside, and that is not the body, that is not the mind, that is something else. So now this body and the mind, they keep on changing. So consciousness is a much more stable entity in a person, in me. Consciousness also changes. Remember, consciousness also changes. Our ancient rishis have recorded, have observed and recorded that consciousness passes through at least 5 different stages. 5 different stages. So we can keep awake, Jagrat Avastha. Then Swapna, you can dream. Then you can have a deep sleep where you don't dream. You are not awake. It's a very refreshing part of the sleep. And we die. Death is a change in consciousness. And the 5th one is called Samadhi. So, through this ability to reason, we shall have to remove all the things in us that doesn't change, hold on to the thing that doesn't change, that is our conscious principle, in a particular state. In a particular state. The state of Samadhi is the goal. And once you have achieved Samadhi, you will be seeing God. So through reason, this is the path. See, you must be patient. You should give me some time. I'll just prepare the background and then I will tell you what is the spiritual practice for the modern world. This is all what is generally accepted. See, tradition, there is a thing called tradition. The generally accepted methods are these. So through reason, this path is called the Jnana Marga. Very good. Then you have love, the ability to love. This is a faculty. So we start in this path, we start by getting attracted to a particular form of God. It could be Jesus, Kali, Krishna, many others. We can choose. You see, we have a choice. We can have a choice. Then we start arranging our entire life around this form of God. So we eat with God, we eat to God, we feed Him, we dream about God, we talk and think about God, we sleep with God, we put God to sleep just as we go to sleep. All activities are designed to give us an experience that this particular form of God is alive and He is living amongst us. All the activities that happen inside the church are meant to give you that experience that God is alive and He responds and He is living. So in India we have taken it to absurd limits. When we love our God, we give him a bath in the morning. As soon as he wakes up, there is beverages and snacks that we give him. Then we give him a bath. Then we set him up for meeting people who come to the house. So anybody who comes to the house will have to first go there, do pranam there, meet, then come talk to us. This is a separate line. This is called the famous Bhakti Marga. So by sustaining activities like this, entirely revolving around a particular form of God that we want, what happens? We will be, this should go on for decades. This is not a 1 or 2 day affair, for decades. This is the second path. The third path, that of intuition. So all of us have this 6th sense. This has to be refined. The process of refining is a very detailed process. So first stage is you will have to sit in a yogic position. Sitting on a chair will not do. Sitting on an easy chair is impossible. So you will have to sit in a yogic position for hours together. Once that sitting has become firm, asana siddhi, then what happens is you will have to gain control of your breath, of the prana. Through the breath you control the prana, And from the prana, you control the muscles, the various organs, and the thoughts, that is the mind. And like this, you go on controlling all aspects of the personality. And what cannot be controlled is the last thing, that is God. This is also a very, very prestigious path, very established path. And there are so many people who have followed this in order to see God. This is called the famous Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga. Lastly, we have the will, the faculty of willing, the faculty of deciding. That is a faculty which can take you up to seeing God. How? So there is a portion of the Vedas called the Purva Mimamsa. So you can understand this as the Old Testament of the Bible. So Bible has two parts. One is the Old Testament and the other is the New Testament. So Vedas also have two parts. One is the Old Veda and one is called the New Veda. So the New Veda is called Vedanta, the Upanishads. The Old Veda is called Purva Mimamsa Veda. So Purva Mimamsa has got lot of details. Many mantras are there. You must start learning those mantras by heart. So when the time comes for chanting the mantras, you can't look into a book and chant. It has to be there in the memory. And then there is a particular method in which fire altars have to be set up. Yajna Kunda, fire altars, you have to set it up. There's a particular method. It's highly geometric, highly mathematical, precise. Then there are particular processes. Certain items have to be, fire cannot be lit with a matchstick or a lighter like we do today. So there is something called a arani. There is a wooden part. These are all ancient techniques. You'll have to follow all of them. You can't miss one part of it. You can't adjust. You can't cut corners. So you'll have to follow the entire thing. And then what happens is, this is a very interesting path this is. You won't see God. When you die, you will go to a place called Brahmaloka. And once you have reached Brahmaloka, thereafter, from there, progressively you will move up and you will see God one fine day. This is called the path of Krama Mukti or Karma Yoga. So, why did I delineate all these things? Some of you may know these things, but still I delineated because see the situation we are in. Sri Ramakrishna never tires of telling that the goal of human life is to see God. You are born as a person, you better have the goal of seeing God. Try to decide and see God before you die. This is the goal for us. He says this. And what are the paths available? Not one of these paths is meant for you and me. It is not meant for you and me. It is meant only for a person who has dedicated himself to a particular lifestyle. So we have so many people here. We have Ganguly Babu is there. Ganguly Babu cannot run all these activities, cannot keep recording these things and then follow any path, because these paths are so detailed and they are so precise that you cannot mix it with any other activity. So activities of your house, you are a housewife perhaps, so you will have to do so many activities. Those cannot be a part of any one of these paths. So now the question comes, if God realization is indeed the goal of human life, what is the path? So you see, there was a king once. This king went for hunting. Now while he went for hunting, he wanted to take some rest in the forest, in the jungle. There were many mosquitoes. So he told one of his soldiers, you see, I am going to lie down here. If a mosquito comes, kill it. If a mosquito comes and tries to bite me, kill it. Now this soldier was a very peculiar fellow. He is an idiot. He is an idiot. So what happens is, when the king is sleeping, the mosquito came and sat on his neck. The soldier, very dutifully, he took out his sword, killed the mosquito. And with the mosquito, the king also died. So, I want to see God. Who will say, I don't want to see God? We all want to see God. But if you want to see God, life, as you know, completely gets broken up. You can't live in your house and see God. That is the traditional understanding. That is the traditional understanding. You can't have your business. You can't be working in an industry or an office. You can't be a teacher or a student. You can't be a housewife. You can't be a child. So for that you will have to live. That is why you see, once Swami Vivekananda made a very interesting comment to Sister Nivedita. So Swamiji said, you see, till now all the that has been done in religion has been for the monk. It has been for the monk. Why? Because monks, you see, we have a very special situation in life. We are free of responsibilities. I don't have wife, I don't have children, I don't have father, I don't have mother, I don't have friends. So no social compulsions, no family relations. So I am quite free to follow these standardized paths. How many can do that? And today the situation is even we monks are unable to follow any of these things in a strict way. It is impossible. I have to run this college. So what of these paths, which of these paths shall I follow? Shall I spend my time in fire sacrifice for Krama Mukti? No. Shall I consider that this body and this mind are false? My voice will go to dogs. My college will start deteriorating. So these things are not possible. And yet, Sri Ramakrishna says that the goal of human life is to see God. How does this happen? How does this happen? So Swami Vivekananda has worked it out. I will not go into the details. I don't want to be philosophical because I don't know good philosophy. I'll tell you a couple of stories and make you understand what exactly is this path, this spiritual practice for this age. So there was a monk. There was a monk. Now this monk, he used to live in the forest outside. He would every day he would go sit under a tree and start his meditation. Whole day he will meditate. That is how Raj Yoga is done. That is how Jnana Marga is followed. You will have to meditate. You can't think. Thinking is not spiritual practice. Meditation is spiritual practice. And meditation doesn't happen automatically. Meditation doesn't happen automatically. So what you do, you sit down so that the body becomes stable. Then the breathing has to be made stable. And then the mind has to be made calm. So mind gets into a restless mode because of what you see and what you hear. So eyes I can close, ears I cannot close. There is no lid on the ear. So it takes time. There is a sound in my room. The fan is on. And there is a small vehicular traffic on the road. Those sounds are there. So if I try to meditate, what happens is my mind immediately runs to those sounds. So by practice, I shall have to acclimatize the mind to these sounds. It takes about half an hour. It's not a joke. It takes half an hour, 45 minutes, even with experienced people. And this sadhu has now started meditating. And now, when the mind has almost settled down and meditation proper can begin, an amazing thing happens. Over the tree, above his head in the tree, two birds, they were fighting. And some dried leaves fell on this monk's head. See, monks, you can understand, we don't have hair on the head. So if something falls, there is no cushion. Suddenly, the concentration that this sadhu had developed, the stability that this sadhu had established, it got disturbed. Imagine. Take this program for example. We are almost half an hour through into this program. So beautifully this has been settled. Imagine the state of mind of Mr. Ganguly or me or Swamiji if everything starts getting haywire. It's a very, very disturbing thing. So this monk also got extremely upset. Arey yaar, I have built up my stage till now. It's almost so beautifully settled. It doesn't happen automatically. And now these birds have started disturbing me. So with lot of anger, he looked at the birds. There was so much anger in him that the birds, they burnt and fell down. They died. They got burnt. Now you see, most of us, when somebody gets hurt, we feel sad. We feel sad. Arey yaar, this fellow got hurt, this lady got hurt. We feel sad. In this case, this monk was happy that the birds got burnt. A monk must feel for others more than other people. No? So this monk was happy. Why? Because for 18 to 20 years, every day he has come, sat below this tree, tried to meditate in order to control the mind and refine one of those faculties and see God. No growth. What? How do you measure spiritual growth? How do you know that you are growing? Today, for the first time, he was able to burn a bird purely by looking at it. this is an extra power. I am on the right path. This is what he understood. That is the reason, even though the birds died, he looked at it as collateral damage. This is fine, it's okay. It has at least shown me that I am on the right path. I am not totally misled. And now, with this much happiness inside, again you cannot meditate, because it is not sadness, it is not any other joy, it is not. Mind cannot be disturbed. Mind has to be perfectly calm. That is the state of meditation. That is the state from which you enter into meditation. If there is a little bit of disturbance in the mind, meditation is not going to happen. So there is joy now. This joy, you cannot meditate, because joy is also extremely disturbing to the mind. So he decided there's no point in meditating. Let me go and take my food. See, in India, what happens is, monks traditionally, we are beggars. We beg for food. We go to the house of, in the village, we go to a house, we stand in front of the house, and we say, Bhavati Bhikshandehi, Namo Narayana, Alak Niranjan. These are the standard terms. When we say this, the lady in the house understands, oh, there is a sadhu who has come, there is a monk who has come, and I have to give cooked food for him. She can't give uncooked food, because monks cannot cook food. These are all traditions. So he went in front of a house and he started shouting, Bhavati Bhikshan Dehi. Very interesting. No sound from inside. After he said 2-3 times, from inside the woman says, the lady of the house, she says, Mahatma ji, please wait. I'll come and give you some food. Wait. So inside, this monk is thinking inside his mind. This lady doesn't know who I am. I am not a run-of-the-mill sadhu. I am not an ordinary sadhu. I am not one of them. I am a very special man. You see, because of the spiritual practices that I have done for the last 20 years, if I look at someone with anger, with concentrated mind, I can burn them. He was thinking like this. Suddenly from inside, this lady says, Oh Swamiji, don't think I am a bird that you can burn. You will have to wait for some time, please. Now, this monk, he doesn't want food. See what happened deep inside the forest. How did this lady come to know? How did this lady read my mind? After 20 years of standard, sustained spiritual practice, I still cannot read mind. I can only burn a bird. This lady can read my mind. Baap re baap, what is the spiritual practice that she is following? So she came out. Then she came out and she started asking sorry. She said, Swamiji, I am very sorry. My father-in-law is not well. I had to take care of him. That is the delay. Please take your food. This monk said, I don't need your food. Tell me, what is the spiritual practice you follow? She says, spiritual practice? No, Swamiji, I have no spiritual practice. I am a very, very normal lady. I don't do any spiritual practice. He said, no, you read my mind. You read my mind. How did that happen? How did you grow to this level? Then she says, very naturally she says, see, I don't do any spiritual practice as such. I don't know any yoga. I don't know any path. This much I have done. Right from my childhood till today. Right? Mind. Whatever I have to do, whatever is my duty, I have done with perfect sincerity, with purity and non-attachment. 2 concepts. And that has made me what I am today. What is the path that she has followed? Whatever is her duty, she has done that with a sense of purity and with a sense of non-attachment. She says, previously I was in my father's house, unmarried. At that time, the duties that fell on my part, I did with a pure mind and in an unattached way. Now that I have got married, I live in my husband's house. Here also I do the same thing. This is all that I have done in my life. I don't know any other yoga. I don't know any other mantra. This is the path that Swami Vivekananda has prescribed as the spiritual practice for the modern age. What is that? All of us have fixed, specific duties. Everybody knows what they are supposed to do. You will have to do it with a sense of purity. Two conditions only. There is nobody today who doesn't have a role in society. That is the speciality of this modern age. Previously, this was not like this. Everybody didn't have work to do. Today, everybody has something or the other to do. There is so much of involvement of the common man today in the entire national and international economy. So in this situation, what happens is everybody has a fixed job, fixed duty. Mr. Ganguly, me, after this class, what is to be done? It is already fixed. You will have to do that. How to do that? Don't we all do our duty? These two conditions have to be met. What is that? The first one is a sense of purity. And the second one is a sense of non-attachment. What are these two things? Listen. Purity is generally associated with a temple or a church. Purity is generally associated with a monk. Purity is generally associated with these things. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. There is a reason why they are associated with these things. But essentially, purity means oneness. If there are no divisions, if there are no distinctions, if there are no breaks, it is pure. Anything which is distinct, anything which is broken from the whole is impure. So God is pure, temple is pure, church is pure. Church is pure because church has Jesus Christ there. And Jesus Christ is not a person. Jesus Christ is all human beings put together, the sum total of all souls. Therefore, purity is Kali, Krishna, the particular form of God that I like, is actually an integration of everything that exists except me. I am separate because I worship. So purity is associated with temples and churches for this reason. But purity essentially means a connection with the whole. Connection with the whole. It is very easy to bring in this concept with respect to the work that we do. Listen to a story. There was a Christian father. Now this Christian father, he wanted to build a church. He had got some money, he got some permission, and he wanted to build a church. So some masons were engaged. Masons, workers were engaged. Now one day, one summer hot day, father goes to see how the work is going on. He meets one mason. He asks him, "What are you doing, my man? What are you doing here?" It's a hot day. This man looks very angrily at the father and says, "Can't you see what I am doing? Do I have to explain it to you? I am taking a brick, I am putting it in a place, I am putting some cement on that, putting another brick." Father thinks, this man is hot. Okay, work is going on, let me go there. He goes to another portion of the building. There, another mason is working. Father asks him, "What are you doing, my man?" Same question, and that mason gives a very beautiful answer. He says, "Father, we are building this wall today. Today by evening, this wall will be complete." Oh, this person is better. A little farther away, there is another mason who is working, and when father asks him, what are you doing? That mason gives an amazing answer. He says, "Father, I am building a cathedral. I am building a church." Look at the three answers. All three of them were doing the same job. See, there is no such job called building a cathedral or building a wall. There is no such job. Why? All that has to be done is take a brick, put some cement on that, put another brick, put some more cement on that, check for the height, check for the correctness of this one. There should not be any inclination. That is what the work is. But one man could not see beyond that. The second man was able to see a little larger aspect of it. And the third worker, he saw the entire picture. The small work that I am doing is connected to something extremely large. Extremely large. This aspect is called purity. This aspect is called purity. So wherever you have this aspect, amazing results come out. There was one Swamiji called Swami Ranganathananda. This Ranganathananda Swamiji was the president of Ramakrishna Mission. So when he was vice president, I remember a clerk had once asked him, in India we have clerks. I don't know in Philippines what they call them. So these are people who run the offices actually. They put up the files, they create the paperwork and people like that. So a clerk asked him, Swamiji, I have to do this work in my office. I am a clerk, upper division clerk, UDC. How should I work? Swamiji gave a beautiful answer. He says, you are a clerk. Do the job of a clerk with the mind of the President of India. Think about it. See, there is no limitation on the mind. Where is the limitation on the mind? There is no limitation on the mind. There is a limitation on my hands. There is a limitation on my social scope. There is a limitation on my powers. There is a limitation on my responsibilities. But why should the mind remain limited? That is where purity comes. This lady has done that kind of a work. All that she has done is what you people do only. Prepare breakfast for your children, get some clothes washed, keep the room clean. This is all the work that ladies have in the house. But you can be doing it with an amazing idea in the mind. What are these children? These children are going to contribute tremendously in some field someday. And I am enabling that. I am enabling that. So the sense of purity. Sense of purity. You all know that famous story, na? John F. Kennedy, in order to escape from the Cuba problem, once decided that we will send a man on the moon. So that was called the Apollo mission. He set that up. The whole country was now talking about the Apollo mission. So he also wanted to go and see how much work is going on. So there was this NASA. NASA was the organization which would do this. NASA headquarters was in Texas. So he went there. When he entered the building, the headquarters, he met a person on the corridor. Then he introduced himself. You see, I am the president of US. I've come to see the work. What do you do here? He asked. That man said, Mr. President, I am putting a man on the moon. That is the answer he gave. Now, Kennedy did not understand. Who is he? Is he the director of NASA? Who is he like? He's putting a man on the moon. When he found out, it turns out that this man was just a sweeper used to clean the toilets in the head office. But you see the mentality with which he has been working? The toilet that I clean will be used by scientists, and these scientists are working on a project, and that project will put a man on the moon, and therefore I am putting a man on the moon. This is purity. See that? Last aspect, the non-attachment aspect. Extremely philosophical idea. I do not want to explain philosophy to you. There are many other wonderful Swamijis who will be speaking on the philosophical aspect. There is something to learn there. I can't explain it. Listen to a story. So there was a monk. Sorry, there was a king. There was a king. Now this king had built a large kingdom. He built a large kingdom. Having built a large kingdom, now everything is settled there. So there are no more further challenges in life. And having worked for a long time, those of you who have set up your own businesses will understand these things. A time comes when you say, let me retire. Let me retire. You have achieved a lot. You have achieved a lot. That is when this mentality comes. He wanted to retire. And since he wanted to retire, he had to discuss with someone. He wanted a friend. When you are at the top, you don't have friends. They will become afraid if you tell, I want to retire and all. So he remembered that he had a friend, a childhood friend, who had become a monk. That monk used to stay in a jungle just outside his palace, outside his capital city. He went to meet him. He met the monk. There, when he met him, he told, Dekho, I have done all these things. Now I want to retire, I want to give it up. What do you say? The monk said, welcome, welcome. That is what I have also done. Please join the club. Welcome to the club. Then the monk asked, Acha Maharaja, Acha King, have you decided who will take care of the kingdom after you? So the king said, no, I have not thought about it. Then the monk said, why don't you ask your son to take over? So the king says, that boy is too immature. He cannot handle this such a large thing. Then the monk said, then why don't you give it to that main person, the prime minister that you have? Why can't he become the king? So the king says, that man works properly when I am around. And if I am absent, his brain doesn't work. Generally it happens. The second man, they get stuck there. There is some Parkinson's principle or something which says this. They will always reach up to the level of their incompetence. So then the monk told, I have a plan, man. I have a plan. See, I am a monk. as a monk, I can officially accept donations. I can accept a subscription, you see. I can accept a donation. Why don't you give your kingdom to me? Not a bad idea. This monk is a known person, is a very, very honest guy. He won't spoil what I have done. Raja immediately accepted. He said, all right. You know how kingdoms are handed over? Kingdoms are handed over by kings have a signet ring. Signet ring. So he took out his signet ring and gave it to the monk. The monk asked him, how do you feel now? He says, extremely light. Extremely light. No responsibilities. I have given everything away to you. Monk says, excellent. Now what do you plan to do? So the Raja said, I will first of all go back to my house, remove this stupid royal clothes, wear normal clothes. Then the monk said, hey Raja, just stop. Think properly before talking. Where will you go? Whose house? I'll go to my house. You gave away the entire kingdom to me. Where is your house now? Fair enough. Fair enough. You can't go back to that house unless you're invited now. It is not yours anymore. So then the Raja said, I will go away from here. Then the monk asks, what will you do? He says, I know many things. I know many skills. I know many things. I'll work. I'll get some money. I'll live. Then the monk says a very interesting thing. He says, Dekho, you ran this kingdom for so many years. Now I will run it. I don't want you in my kingdom because you will keep on commenting. You'll be another power center for me. You understand? You'll be a power center. I don't want you around. You'll be a nuisance for me. Raja said, fair enough. That is right. Because if I were in your position, I too would have objected like this. Excellent. I'll go to some other kingdom and I'll work and I will get my food and I'll live. The sadhu wants to know, the monk wants to know whether this fellow will work or not. This fellow is still in the situation where he has to keep on working. That is where we all are. We all are. Most of us have a tendency to go for spiritual practices because it takes us away from work. It's an escapism. Whereas, not in every case, in most cases. Some genuine cases will be there. But here, you see, he wants to retire, but he won't give up working. So the monk gave him a beautiful offer. He said, Dekho Raja, ek baat hai mera. I have something to tell you. The thing is, I am a holy person. I am a monk. I don't have any responsibilities in life. Very recently, I got a kingdom. Now I have to run this bloody kingdom. I don't have time for this. I don't have the mentality for this. On the other hand, you have a tendency, you have a knowledge of running the kingdom. You have a knack for running the kingdom. You have experience for that. I'll give you a salary, 1 lakh rupees per month. You run this kingdom for me. Excellent arrangement, you see. Arrangement was excellent. So, that Raja went back. 6-7 months later, suddenly this sadhu, this monk remembered, Arey yaar, I have a kingdom. And that Raja is running it. I better go and see once. So he went there. The Raja got up. He welcomed this monk. Then the monk asks, Kya Raja, sab theek chal raha hai to? Everything is going fine to? Everything is going fine. So how do you feel working? He says, I work with tremendous joy now. Why is that? He says, because the joy of working is mine. And the responsibility is all yours. This attitude is non-attachment. Remember this. See, try to remember the arrangement that happened between the Raja and that monk was unknown to anybody. It happened outside there. Nobody knew about it. So, for all practical purposes, people who saw him in this kingdom, they didn't make out any difference. It was the same thing. It was the same thing. He was a Raja before, he is also now the Raja. But now there is something that has happened inside. Now the responsibility has shifted. So that is, you will offer whatever you do to God. That is non-attachment. So these are extremely simple. It looks so simple, some of us may doubt, will it work? It does work. It does work. So 2 attitudes. The sense of purity with respect to work and the sense of non-attachment with respect to work. Whatever we do, we keep on offering it to God. This has to be done day after day, year after year for decades. The change happens. So, through this, you will be able to work out that idea that Sri Ramakrishna said, the goal of human human life is to see God. And in order to do that, there is no need to run away from society. Society will crumble down. Then what about us monks? So that is the reason Swamiji said you may be a monk. You may not like to get married, you may not like to get encumbered, but you will have to be a part of society. You can't run away from society. This is the idea that I wanted to share with you all. My 40 minutes are over. Mr. Ganguly, are you there?
Yes, I'm there, Maharajji. So thank you, Maharajji, for your such an enlightening and insightful discourse. So you have told us the main goal of human life is seeing God. And you also gave the example of NASA. That is, we should have the big picture in mind, the ultimate picture. So work is worship, and kind of we should not be, our vision should be profound, it should be macro, it should be big. You gave the example of Ranganathananji gave, that is a upper division clerk. While doing his work, he should have the vision of the President of India, and then he perform his task. But Maharajji, I have a very, very basic question before others start. I have tried to read Gospel as much as I could, and I get the feel that the main ultimate goal of life is to seeing God. But maybe question may come in mind: why do I need to see God? So maybe I for a householder like me, why do I need to see God?
You will need to see God because the fundamental human nature will not let you do anything else as the goal of life. See, there are any number of activities, any number of goals that we can pursue. Certainly we shall pursue them. None of them has to be rejected. So you need to get married, you need to raise a family, you need to start a business, you need to get into a factory, do all these things. You need to run for president. Please do all these things. But remember that these are all just milestones. This is not the destination. Why is it not the destination? It is not a destination for the very simple fact that whatever you plan to achieve, and once you have achieved it, it will not satisfy you. If it satisfies you, the problem is not there. What is it that you wanted to become? You wanted to set up a very good factory, let us say. You wanted to set up a very good business. You set it up, man. You set it up. It is running very well. What more? That is where the question comes. There is only one goal, that is seeing God. Having seen God, you don't want anything else. The game has stopped. We don't die. Seeing God is not death. Seeing God is not death. You will continue to exist. You will continue to live. And the joy of living actually starts after that, is what our records say. All of us don't even know what joy is. So why should we see God? You have to see God, because if anything else was supposed to satisfy you, please, you don't have to see anything. Does it? Can anybody put his hand on his chest here and say, I have done this and I am satisfied. I don't need anything else. Never happens. There's always something else that you want. Oh, if only I could do that. The one satisfied person, Krita Kritya, the name for this person is called Krita Kritya. He doesn't want to do anything else except continue to see God. And in the meantime, he'll be running a business. He'll be setting up an organization like Vivekananda did. All these things he does while seeing God. See the quality of the output of that one. Mr. Ganguly.
Thank you very much, Maharajji. Sort of a very satisfying response, Maharajji. I would now request our friends, if they have any question or observation, please.
I have one observation.
Please, Hiranya,
with permission.
Please, Hiranya.
Yes, this is not a question, Maharaj. Maharaj Pranam, I come from an area which is very close to Belur Math, So I know this center very well. I come from Baranagar, very close to Alambazar Mott, my house. But now I'm in Manila for many years. Anyway, Maharaj, every lecture we have been having for quite some time, I try to understand what it is that I am learning today. One lesson I am learning from this lecture. So I have no question, Maharaj, but what I have learned from your lecture today, or what in my limited knowledge I learned from you, is a very satisfying thing, very joyful thing I learned today from your lecture, Maharaj. On many occasions, people like us who want to pray to God, pray to whatever little achievement we want to do, but inferiority complex comes. Oh, I have done nothing. I can never be go forward in this path of religious spiritual life. Look at those monks, look at Maharaj, look at that monk, look at this monk. I have done nothing. But from today onwards, I will think about like your third mission. Whatever I am doing, my mind is not limited, my mind is not restricted. My ear, my activities, my body, my leg, my hands, they are all restricted, but my mind is not restricted. Whatever I am doing, I must think about that ultimate goal. So I am not doing anything inferior. I am also a fellow passenger in the same path or journey you have taken. That's the message I got from your wonderful lecture, Maharaj. Thank you and pranam.
Virendra Babu, it is because this kind of idea was never given importance in India, that belief in God is the only way for most of the people, especially married people. Believe in God. So Kali exists. Why? Because I have seen. I am a monk. I am a dedicated spiritual practitioner. I have seen Kali. Will you see? How can you see? You be satisfied that I have seen. This state has come only because of that. Now that has to go. This is the age of universal rights. All human beings, irrespective of their social status, are equal. There is no difference about it. There cannot be any discrimination. And if that is true, then equal opportunity will be given to everybody. So equal opportunities, you will see God, I will see God. It cannot happen that I will see God and you serve me. That is what all religions have today have taken the shape. I will see God, and what is your duty as a married man? You will serve me, serve me. Whereas I will see God, that is what I will. This has to change. This will change. This kind of movement that has been started by Swami Vivekananda, it will change that. All of us have to see God. Thank you, Hiranmaji. When you come to Calcutta, please come visit us in Kerala.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Maharajji, for your very enlightening answer. Any other question or observation or comments? You are most welcome. Stephen is there. Stephen, do you want to ask anything? Shantanu, you want to ask anything?
No, Nirmala, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay.
I want to ask Shantanu one thing. Shantanu said namaste to Maharaj in the beginning. Was it to Vishwajit Maharaj or to me?
No, actually, Maharaj, I mixed you up with Sanjeev Maharaj, who is going to speak the next session. My apologies.
Okay.
The
session will be done by our.
So he mixed up between two polytechnics, you know.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so two polytechnic colleges. So
Yes.
okay.
Thank you, Maharaj. Pranam.
Okay. Any other question, Stephen? If you have anything, you can ask. Yes, Stephen. Mohanji, if you want to ask anything, you are most welcome. Stephen is there. Please speak out. Stephen, I see you unmuted. Okay. There is some technical problem, I suppose.
Very clear.
Stephen, I see you unmuted. So if you have any question, please, or comments, please speak out. Mr. Mohan, do you have anything to say, Mohanji?
Not really, Ji.
Okay, okay.
No, I can ask one question. Maharaj Ji, how do you know you've seen God?
Come again?
How do you know that you've seen God when you see God?
You see, I haven't seen God, so I will not be able to give you an answer from personal experience. Whereas, this is a field that has been studied very deeply especially in India and also in certain other cultures, and therefore they have made certain standardization of the process and the end result. Certain standardization of the process and the end result. So there are certain very standard experiences that a person is supposed to have concomitant with God realization. So now, take Mr. Mohan for example. I am now aware that I am sitting here in Belur Math and you are sitting in Manila and that you are a person. All these things I am aware of. Whereas, if only I had realized God, what would have happened is, I would have been able to look at this entire world through your eyes. I would have been able to become you. So, the person who realizes God becomes everybody. Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. That is one of the most general descriptions of a God realized soul. So now, for example, I don't find myself one with anyone. I find all of you to be different from me. So Pritak, they're all different from me. Now, the one nearest approximation that I can make to God realization is I somehow get a vague idea that all of you are one in God and I am one with God and I can worship God and therefore I can worship all of you. I can meet all of you. That is one feeling that I can feel. That's all it is. But as an experience, so end of the day, what is the standard? Where is the certifying body that a person has seen God? I don't know whether there will ever be any such certifying body, but the experience itself is so wonderful that it will not leave any doubt in the first place, and in the second place, there is absolutely no difference between you and everything else that exists. So therefore, harming another person, cheating another person, conning another person, these are all out of the question. So you can't have a person claiming to be a realized soul and conning people, cheating people, telling lies. How can you tell lies? Because whatever exists is but you yourself. So you will never be able to create a non-existent lie. That is the state of mind. Mr. Mohan I try to explain it in as brief a way as possible. There are many more such recorded experiences. You will have to map those things. Mr. Mohan, you there?
Well, thank you, Maharaj Ji.
Yes. Maharaji, Stephen has a question. Maybe he had a technical problem, he could not speak out. His question, Mr. Stephen's question is that, what is the meaning of offering everything to God? Mr. Stephen is from Philippines. He's a Filipino.
Yes. Offering everything to God. He's a Filipino. So the meaning of offering everything to God. So it's a very interesting thing. Motives. Motive. There is a motive why we work. There is something that I want to achieve. Right? Now that motive actually is a very interesting thing. If I didn't have the motive, I would have told, I will not want to work. So the motive is there, and the motive is what has divided me from rest of you. Motive divides us from the rest of you. So the reason why we work, that reason will have to be God. That is what is meant by saying offer everything to God. So when I offer everything to God, what happens is the work that I do is God, the implements of the work is God, the goal to be achieved by this work is God. Say for example, I am now trying to speak to you people. I am trying to have a class with some of these devotees here. Now this is the limited aspect of this work. But I can imagine that the goal of this work, the end result of this work is to enable me to see God. There's possibility for me to think like that. Now, does that mean that the quality of the class can be compromised? No. Does that mean that if something wrong happens in this class, I don't take responsibility for that? No. All those things are taken care of. I am responsible for the work that I do, but I am responsible for the results of the work that I do. But I offer everything to God because why is it that I have done this? Why is it that I have done this? I have done this in order to keep up my word with Udarananda Swamiji. I have taken this class in order to honor what I spoke with Ganguly Sahib. I have taken this class in order to explain a little bit of Vivekananda's ideas to the devotees in Manila, and much more. So all these things are taken care of. These are not, we don't neglect these things. So there is a mantra in Bhagavad Gita. Very briefly, I will tell you. Brahma Arpanam, Brahma Havihi, Brahma Agno, Brahmana Hutam, Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhi. So how does a person offer everything to God? Because he has to imagine very clearly, because the truth is that, the ontological truth is that, this is the truth. What is that? Whatever exists is God. Can you have something which is not God that exists? Impossible. Because a priori our definition of God is all that exists. Existence is God. I am that I am. That is what the Bible says. You see, I am that I am. Whatever exists, I am. So Brahma Agno, Brahma Arpanam. So the act of offering, act of working is God. The implements with which I do this work is God. The end result of this work is God. Who is doing the work? I that I am doing the work, that are a part of this work. You are also God. I am also God. This is the vision of a person who offers everything to God. This is what is meant. This may look odd. This may look odd. So all these things will make sense only when we accept a priori that statement that Ramakrishna makes. The goal of human life is to see God. If that is not the goal, then all these things we don't need. We don't need these things. It is something like graduation in education. You see, graduation. If it depends on what class we are. It depends on what class we are. So if you are in a small class, you don't have to do many things, and you won't see the meaning of doing many things. Take a project report, for example. You would not like to do a project report if you are in a small class of 2 or 3. But then slowly the child is going to grow up, and then all these things will become meaningful. Mr. Stephen, is that okay? Could you hear me? You nod your head. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj Ji, for such a comprehensive answer. And I think we had a couple of questions. So I would now request our friend Hiranya Mukhopadhyay to kindly give vote of thanks. Hiranya.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you very much on behalf of the Philippines Ramakrishna Vedanta Society for this wonderful talk. For us, the talk is always very interesting, important to focus our attention. If you mix up your talks with nice, beautiful anecdotal stories, that will be very easy for us to focus our attention on the main message of the talk. So that way, your talk was extremely interesting, for me at least, extremely enjoyable. So again, Maharaj, thank you from the bottom of our heart on behalf of all the devotees in Philippines as well as outside Philippines. And thank you again, Maharaj. Pranam.
Thank you very much, Maharaj Ji, for being so kind and gracious enough to spend time with us tonight, and also give us our such mine house of advice and guidance, and emphasizing that the ultimate object is to seeing God. So that big picture we should not be oblivious of. We are so grateful to all the participants and to Maharaj Ji for spending time with us. And as decided, we will have another 5 minutes of informal session. Please allow me to end this formal discussion, end the recording, and I'll come back within 30 seconds. So I beg your silence for 30 seconds. I'll come back and then we can have an informal session if somebody have any further question or comments.